You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hi everybody, Alex here. Welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about the question of how are you? Now, if you're like Megan and I, you have probably had a lot of things going on the last 2 years and a lot of things unfolding, a lot of transitions. We've been talking about that here on the podcast and on social media and of course inside our groups like Health Transformation Accelerator program. And one of the things that Megan and I were laughing about one time, we went on a walk and in the morning and we saw each other. We're like, how you doing? And then the first person was like, well, just kind of depends on which part of me you're asking about, right? And the other person laughed. I can't remember how it all went down exactly. But we sat on the walk and we started to reflect on how tricky of a question that actually is when you are standing at the helm of directing your life. It's one thing when years ago we were like, life's just going the way it's going, right? And you're like, I get what I get, I'm doing what I'm doing, whatever thoughts, whatever emotions, whatever things come up, that's what it is, and you just move through it. So a question like, how are you doing? You know exactly what to fill in the blank. It's like whatever is happening. However, when you start to stand in empowerment and co-creation and taking responsibility for what happens and understanding that those are an outflow of who we are at an identity level and how cohesive we are in terms of our physical body, emotional body, mental body, spiritual body, and bringing that all together and in the process understanding where you are not congruent within yourself, answering the question of how are you becomes a completely different experience, because what we were realizing is that you begin to see that as an opportunity where you are telling the story of how are you directing your life, right? That becomes not a reaction, not just what has happened to me, therefore how am I doing, but like an actual response. And you have to come up consciously then with what you are choosing that to be. And that is a completely different way than many of us have lived, because it's a completely different way than we've been taught. So what we realized was that the question of how are you and answering it becomes, what story am I telling myself today? And what story am I telling then the world today? And which part of that would I like to focus in this moment? Now, one of the things that we know happens, because we have done it, is that it's really tempting then when you are standing and taking full responsibility for what that is to always try to make it positive and feel bad when it's not, right? There's something to be said for people are like, yes, I hear that. I want to focus on where I'm going. Therefore, let me tell that story rather than rehashing basically the gum that has all its flavor chewed out of it, like I'm so sick of being anxious, or I'm so sick of being sick, and right, all of those things. If we don't want the life experience, we we don't rehash that story over and over in the same way that we did used to. It used to be like, let me tell you how much I'm struggling. And now, as we've changed, there's obviously less focus on that. However, it's just as important to stand in the power and the responsibility of your authenticity. And I think that's where, as we evolve, then it does get a little bit trickier, because you go from the old way of being to a new one. And you're like, cool, I am creating. I'm going to tell myself the story of where I want to go. And then at some point, I think many of us also begin to acknowledge, hey, that doesn't mean we get out of negative emotions. It doesn't get us out of being triggered. It doesn't get out of making difficult decisions or setting boundaries or having challenging conversations with people we love, right? Those things are still true. And then in the moment of how are you? And you say, well, what story am I telling? What is the most authentic and yet supportive of where we're going? Answer. That's the reply. And all of that together, that's not a small thing to come up with, right? I mean, I think most of us fire off the, oh, I'm good, oh, it's fine, oh, okay, right? We have our rehearsed scripts. And I was laughing the other day because we were at a training, and their definition of fine was one of those, the acronyms that's like fed up, insecure, neurotic, emotional. And I was just laughing because I have a shirt that says I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine, as it was gifted to me as a joke, and now I look at it completely differently as well. So we have those. And of course, I think sometimes when you're out in the real world, I still definitely fire up the like, oh, good, even when that happens, because it's like, well, that's the bank teller. I'm not going to go into a whole sob, or my future vision. And sometimes I answer the way that it goes, right? So this is not here's a canned answer. This is simply a discussion of, when you answer stuff like that, what is the intentionality behind the words and the story that you're telling, honoring the fact that when we tell the story of our life, that is ours participating and buying into what we are experiencing. And therefore, when we say, I no longer want to experience that, and for things like difficult emotions, almost no one says, like, I never want to be sad again, right? Like, we're human, that may happen. It's more the, what outdated way of being in my identity and my external environment that I no longer want to tell the story of, and then taking it from there. And once you start thinking about questions like, how are you? You start to see in the world every day, there are opportunities like this over and over and over again to reaffirm our reality and our experience. And then you can start to appreciate, and we all can start to appreciate, why so many of us have the experience of, I say I want to be different, but my life is the same. When we are reaffirming that same story over and over and over again throughout the day, those small little mentions to the brain don't go unnoticed. So this is a fascinating topic to think about. If you've never, unpackaged something even as simple as how are you, I invite you to come join us on this side of thinking about your life. It's very eye-opening and also ultimately very empowering, even if in the moment Megan and I were like, oh wow, there's a lot of things that I say, right? And acknowledging them, and then not making it mean anything about yourself other than, great, now I have awareness and therefore I have choices. And that's really what we're all after, right? We all want those nice, great options to choose from. All right, so that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.